And Bob Ney with the Talk Radio News Service, talkradionews.com, brought to you by Goats for the Old, goat.com and free-don.org. Bob, the author of Sideswiped and former member of the U.S. House of Representatives. Congressman, welcome back.
Thank you, Tom.
What's going on in the world today?
Well, there's a lot. I wanted to note something that you're probably not going to see all over the place, but Speaker John Boehner has asked Representative Kay Granger of Texas and has asked her to lead a congressional working group on national security and humanitarian crisis at the southern border. And I just wanted to mention that because in the heels of this lawsuit by Speaker Boehner, which, by the way, nowhere that I could see in it does actually contain the words executive orders. It's this is very interesting. It's the authority of the president. He's going to sue on the president's use, his use of power, basically.
Yeah.
So it's not just a named thing about executive orders, and I state that because people are wondering why he did it. Is this to keep himself with the Tea Party, which is part of it, but it builds a broader brush of the president overstepping, quote, authority, which is a lot different than just an executive order.
Is that a variation on saying, how dare that black man be uppity like that?
Well, it's something.
I mean, seriously, that would be the shout-out to the racists in the Tea Party in the South.
Well, it's the use of his authority. And, at first I thought executive order, and I heard that all over the mainstream media. So I started looking, and he's talking about blanket authority, authority over you. So
Yeah.
I think there are some psychological implications of what he's doing.
And perhaps racial ones.
Yes, it's not just to file some type of lawsuit to, keep himself as speaker next time, with the base.
That's interesting. I mean, you're a former politician. You know this stuff much better than I do. It seemed to me that what he is going to get out of this is what the Republicans got out of the impeachment of Clinton, only without the bad rap. I mean, the bad rap was one branch of government is trying to actually remove another branch of government from office, a guy that we elected. And Americans were offended by that. We elected Clinton, and Clinton's popularity actually went up as a consequence of the impeachment because people were saying, hey, wait a minute, we elected this guy. In this case, they're not trying to remove him from office. And so they're not going to get that bad rap of, this is just, political whatever. But they will control the news cycle for the next, arguably, couple of years, as long as they can drag this thing out with charge after charge and suit after suit and court after court. It seems to me like a Frank Luntz-style brilliant political strategy. And if the president doesn't fight back really hard and really fast, he's going to end up being Michael Dukakis.
Well, you made the point of the day because Nancy Pelosi, her words back were, this is a subterfuge. And that's not the approach to take, not to use some, high word that means the underlying,
right.
of the government. This is going to have to be an aggression back because, again, this is about the authority of the president. And the Speaker knows he can't sue a president. No member can sue a member. And you can't sue him over an individual act. But you can question a member's integrity, the member's ethics, the member's approach, the style. Is it immoral, moral, etc.? And so this goes psychologically not to an executive order. It goes to the authority that this man has over you, is the psychological implication.
So in a way, what you're suggesting is that the message behind the message that people who watch Fox News are hearing, particularly white people who watch Fox News are hearing, is a variation on where's this guy's birth certificate. In other words, this president is illegitimate. That was the original argument, and an illegitimate president. And now the argument is he is illegitimately using the power of his office. So it's just a variation on that, which takes me back to my theory that people forget after Ronald Reagan was nominated to be the Republican Party's standard bearer, he left that convention, and the first speech he gave as an official Republican candidate for president of the United States was in Philadelphia, Mississippi, where the 3 civil rights workers were murdered. And a little town of 5,000 people. He goes to a little town of 5,000 people in the middle of nowhere to give the first speech, and it was a speech on states' rights. And really, every racist in America, I see the press wasn't paying attention, but the hard right was going, oh, now we know who he is. You know, now we know what he's all about. And isn't it possible, or what do you think of my theory here? And I'd love for you to ask, you know, this is the kind of question to ask Elijah Cummings or you know, Senator John Conyers, or maybe we can get Charlie Rangel on. He's a regular guest on this program, and say, you know, isn't this just a variation on that? A shout out to the white racists saying that, you know, here's this black man who's exceeding his authority over us.
Mm-hmm. And I thought that was of interest because, again, this is not just an implication towards executive orders or signing statements,
right?
But it's an actual lawsuit which the Speaker knows is unheard of, unprecedented.
Right.
To file a lawsuit on the authority of a president.
And what's the deal with Jonathan?
On an order.
Yeah, and what's the deal with quote liberal lawyer Jonathan Turley, you know, being quoted over in the Daily Caller as saying, yeah, this is a legitimate lawsuit.
No member can be sued. You can say anything you want on the floor. You can carry out your activities. You can, you know, do anything unless it's a crime.
Right.
You can do anything you want to say.
Yeah, there's a certain level of sovereign immunity, isn't there?
Well, yes, it's built in that no member can be sued. Neither can the president be sued for their official duties.
Right. The
now,
mechanism for holding
that's one thing.
Right. The mechanism for holding presidents and members of Congress accountable for their behavior in office, which is what we're talking about here, is either impeachment or elections.
Correct.
And so that's why what I'm saying is that Boehner is getting impeachment without calling it impeachment.
Correct. Because he knows he can't really have an impeachment vote.
Right. Right.
But he gets what he wants psychologically in the sense of he's officially, legally challenging the authority of Barack Obama to be president of the United States.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Bob Ney with the Talk Radio News Service, talkradionews.com, goatsfortheoldgoat.com. Bob, thanks for dropping by.
Thank you.
And it seems to me that if Bob Ney is right, and John Boehner is not specifying executive orders or specific things that the president has done, but instead is simply making this blanket charge that Barack Obama is using presidential power in a way that's not legitimate. This is simply step 2, phase 2, version 2, V 2.0 of the birth certificate thing. It's like before it was he's not legitimately president because he's not legitimately an American. And that got kind of blown up. And, you know, in fact, Louise and I were sitting in the room with the president and his wife and Donald Trump at the White House Correspondents' Dinner when the president released his birth certificate and made fun of Donald Trump. It was hysterical. And Trump just sat there, you know, with his arms folded and this grumpy look on his face through the whole thing. We had an interesting little moment. Those of you who were watching or listening back, that was 2 years ago, I think it was, when that happened, maybe 3. I told you the story on the air. I'll just repeat it real quickly. The Washington Post there was a bunch of groups that were throwing parties just before the Correspondents' Dinner, and you had to, you know, you had to have permission to get into the parties, and we were invited to this one. And so we're sitting in this room in the downstairs in the hotel where the ball was, or where the Correspondents' Dinner was held. We're standing around in this cocktail party at the Washington Post had put on, and along with maybe, I don't know, 80, 90 people in this fairly large room. And Donald Trump comes in with his entourage, with his current trophy wife on his arm, and two very large guys dressed all in black with little things and, you know, wires in their headphones in their ears. You know, obviously his security detail on either side of him. And Louise says, I got to find out. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she says, I got to find out. And she walks right up to him. I mean, right up to him. And he looked at her like he was going to say, you know, hello, you know, like you do at a cocktail party. She walks right up to him, looks at his hairline, and turns to me and says, it's bad plugs. And he's starting to turn red. I'm pulling her away, you know. I mean, she just normally doesn't do this kind of thing. Anyway, And then, you know, an hour later, he was just humiliated by the president. It was, and to this day, I mean, he's trying to take out his revenge anytime he can get on Fox News. So anyhow, that's my evolving theory here, and it's been evolving over the last 24 hours, is that what Boehner is doing with this lawsuit, my original theory was the lawsuit is simply impeachment 2.0. In other words, the Republicans will get the benefits of impeachment, of publicly humiliating the president, without the liability of the American people thinking it's unfair that they're trying to kick a guy out of office that people voted in. But now I'm starting to think that this is not impeachment 2.0, that this is birth certificate 2.0. Because if they're not going after specific actions that he's done, but instead they're simply asserting that he's now behaving like a king, I mean, how long will it be before some Yahoo, you know, some Louis Gohmert, or who is the guy, the you lie guy, you know, steps up and says, you know, he's behaving like a Zulu prince. Who was that? Joe Wilson, yeah, from South Carolina. The guy who yelled, "You lie," during the State of